most of the stem cells wouldn't survive in the body. 95% die. And the other issue is the stem cells don't actually regenerate new tissue, they just reduce inflammation. So where can we get cells that regenerate tissue? These are called pluripotent stem cells. The pluripotent means that they can turn into any cell in your body. We combine it with something called a hydrogel scaffold. There's all these people doing stem cell injections, but they don't tell you the biggest drawback, which is within 24 hours, only 2% of them remain in the joints because they migrate.
Whether it's Kim Kardashian, Chris Hemsworth, Zac Efron, or even the legendary Tony Robbins, who's been on the show, he is the doctor to the stars. This guy knows how to solve the problem of longevity. He's working every day to help people deal with chronic illnesses so they can live longer. So welcome to the show, the incredible Doctor to the Stars, Dr. Adeel Khan.
Imagine after having a stroke, you have damage. She showed in a clinical trial that the muse cells could significantly help these people get back to a normal quality of life. And same thing with heart attack. It could improve left ventricular ejection fraction, basically the heart function, and reduce scarring. There's something called the hallmarks of aging, which are these root drivers at a cellular level that are happening. One of the most important hallmarks of aging is called mitochondrial dysfunction. So how do we restore function to the cell? What we can do is with these interventions, with these cellular technologies and these regenerative medicine, we can actually restore function to the cell.
Well, I've had a few doctors in the show over the course of the last few years, but I now have the #1 doctor in the world at helping us regenerate, rejuvenate, and create longevity in our lives. So thank you, Dr. Adeel, for coming to join us today.
Yes, thank you. That's a humbling introduction, but yes, I'm very proud of what we do.
Do you find it hard sometimes when people heap praise on you? And,
I do.
How good you are.
I do. I'm from humble beginnings, working class, and for me, it's still surreal to be doing what I'm doing on a daily basis.
So for the benefit of people that don't know you, what exactly do you do and why do you do it?
So I use the latest technologies. These are medical technologies in the field of what's called regenerative medicine, which is really just about getting your own body to heal itself. So I think we all have this, hopefully we all have this belief that our body can heal itself, and we're just unlocking that code. There's a blueprint and we're figuring out what that is day by day. And so my job is to figure out which technologies, which signals and tools do we need to use so your body can fix itself. That's very simply what I'm doing. And why do I do it? It's the biggest reason, to be honest, was my mother had a chronic illness, and it really started out with that because she was suffering and the traditional system just didn't have solutions for her. So I'm sure many people who have chronic illnesses can relate to this. It's you go from doctor to doctor, or you go from specialist to specialist, and there's medication after medication, and there's no actual resolution. And there's just symptom management and just trying to really manage it, not cure, reverse it. And so when my mother dealt with that, and this was when I was in medical school, and so I just started reading about functional medicine, integrative medicine, in addition to allopathic. Allopathic is traditional medical, like MD, right? Doctor of medicine. But then these other kind of philosophies are basically focused on what's the root cause of disease. And then now it's evolved into regenerative medicine, or what we call systems biology, which is the system is connected as a whole, and how do we get to the root of that?
Now, you've had a whole bunch of celebrities that have put their trust in you, celebrity business people, celebrity movie stars, all that kind of stuff, and we'll go on to those in a while. But there must be a reason why they're putting their trust in you, okay? They can't have just gone, oh, he looks good. Okay? There's got to be a reason for that. And, and a lot of the time the world will judge whether somebody is good based upon who their clients are, and you couldn't get bigger than Tony Robbins, the Kardashians, Chris Hemsworth, and all that kind of stuff, really, could you?
No, it's the clientele I have. It's been an amazing journey, but I think really it's because I've been able to solve problems for them that other people weren't able to solve. So that's really what it comes down to. I think in any job, if you can do the same thing that 100 other people can do, then you don't really stand out. But if you can do something that no one else can do, and you can figure out how to get into those, let's say, kind of like little corners where other people don't know how to navigate, then all of a sudden you become super valuable. I like the saying that you do something where it's scarce, it's rare, people don't have that skill set, but it's high in demand. So I figured out how to become a scarce, high in demand person.
So let's analyze that for a second, because when we think about it, it's like you're either really good at marketing,
Yeah.
okay, or you do something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to think
Okay.
of it.
And
Yeah.
so let's say you're not very good at marketing. You got
Yeah.
that by chance. And let's say you do something different.
Yeah.
What do you think makes you stand out from other people in your space as the go-to person for some of the most famous people in the world?
I think it's curiosity because in medicine, as doctors, we learn all these things. We go through so many years of training, and then we're kind of like, okay, I've learned what I needed to. And the ongoing medical education is essentially these yearly conferences, which are for the most part sponsored by pharmaceutical companies or some sort of industry sponsored event. And that's not to say it's bad because there are obviously pharmaceuticals which are important, but you're just learning that limiting scope, that limited scope. So really, for me, it's about learning what else is out there. And I have a good eye. I just seem to have a knack for being able to identify technologies that are not just useful, but then also have this commercial scalability, for example, that can hopefully, reach lots of people.
Do you think at the age of, I think, what are you, 38, 39 years old?
Yeah, 38, just
Okay,
38.
38 years old. Do you think having a baby face at your age might work in your favor?
That certainly does work. When Kim met me, she's like, "What do you do for your face?" She's like, "What do you? How often do you do it?" And then, so yeah, definitely that plays in my favor. I think, but I also think personally, with some of my patients who've been with me for like 5, 6 years, and they've seen my, let's say, it's not a complete transformation, obviously, because I'm not that old, but they've said I visibly look younger, and obviously, I look at some of my old pictures, and I'm like, oh, I do look younger. So then I think that just it kind of gives some credence to what we're doing, and that if because of course if I looked very, very old for a guy who's promoting longevity and stem cells, it would be kind of hypocritical almost, right?
But you see it, you see fat personal trainers, you see
Yeah,
fat
yeah,
nutritionists
yeah, yeah,
sometimes, and you're
exactly.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
How could you trust a fat personal
No, the
trainer?
the credibility and the authenticity factor is very important, and I think that's also important for people to look for because for me, it's always been a part of my DNA basically since I was young. I remember being 10 years old and telling people I want to live to 120. And I don't know why, but it was just like one of those things when you just love life and you're grateful for being alive and you just want to have it as much as possible and as long as possible. And then when you see other people suffer, it's like that's not fair, obviously. And so you want to do something about it. And that's the whole idea.
I think that beauty is a very feminine thing to kind of think about and try and improve. Chronic illness and chronic diseases and stuff like that is, universal. Doesn't matter how old you are or
Hmm.
what, male or female, doesn't matter at all. And so that obviously appeals to a much larger chunk of the market. Not to say that there aren't men out there that care about that stuff too, but
Yeah.
I'm saying this because I think I know. I don't even know. I'm going to ask you. Yeah, am I right?
No, you're right. The percentage
Okay.
of men who do cosmetics versus women is I mean, it's got to be at least 5-to-1 ratio in my experience. But yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah,
It's all right.
yeah.
Good. Now let's talk about chronic illnesses and diseases and the kind of stuff that exists out there because um, people need to know what that means to start with so that they can understand it. Because I was thinking earlier before you came about the pain that I was suffering with my back before I had the surgery, and it
Hmm.
was like 2 or 3 years. I had sciatica,
Right,
and it just wouldn't go. And eventually, the doctor said to me, the chiropractor said, "I can't help you anymore.
right.
You need an operation."
Yeah.
And it was like microdiscectomy, then turned into spinal fusion surgery,
Mm.
and then 2 years of morphine.
Wow.
And like chronic pain, and I
Yeah.
couldn't get rid of it. But again, like you said earlier, I'm taking the tablet to deal with the pain. I'm not fixing the problem.
Yeah.
And then I went on to develop a problem with my knee, and I struggle with a pain that I have in my knee that I can't quite fix. But I haven't. I'm one of these people that's kind of, well, I'm 55 years old. Of course, I'm going to have aches and pains. Of
Yeah.
course, I just better accept it. I'm getting old, yeah. And that I would argue would be for a lot of people the normal way of thinking.
Yeah.
Give me an example of some of the chronic illnesses that people have, and let's break it down and take 2 or 3 of them and just talk about what the process is to create healing for those people.
Yeah, I mean, just to give people some context, our medical system works amazingly well in North America and Europe and all these places for acute, right? If you have a fractured arm, you need to get surgery, you have a heart attack, system works beautifully. But for chronic diseases, diseases that last for more than 6 months and that just like diabetes, like high blood pressure, like Alzheimer's, There's autoimmune conditions, osteoarthritis, like joint degeneration. There's so many conditions, right? Those conditions often the system is not optimized or designed to treat those conditions the best way possible, which is getting to the root cause. And so that's the problem, right? And so what we do, for example, in your case, if you had known me a few years ago, I may have been able to avoid you getting back surgery. And that's something we do all the time. And why can we do that now? Because let's give an example with your knee. Let's say what's happening in your knee, it's more than just wear and tear, right? Wear and tear was kind of the old understanding of what's
Mhm.
going on, and a lot of doctors still say that, but that's not what's happening.
Mine
There's
did, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so so it's not just wear and tear. It's way more complicated than that. There's something called the hallmarks of aging, which are these root drivers at a cellular level that are happening. So meaning there's actual changes happening. Your cells, there's all these things that are happening. For example, like your mitochondria, which is where energy metabolism happens. So whenever you eat food, your body has to convert that into energy, right? And that's that process happens in your mitochondria. And so that's one of the most important hallmarks of aging. It's called mitochondrial dysfunction. That mitochondria just don't work as well. They make more mistakes because your mitochondria have their own DNA, right? And so their instruction manual kind of gets blurred over time, and they start making more mistakes. And there's more what's called free radicals and oxidative stress. So over time, that's just one example of what's happening in your knee right now. And so so if you think about it, and there's all these other cellular processes. So if you think about it, it's not just wear and tear; it's actual cell dysfunction. So how do we restore function to the cell? So that's first thing to understand. And now what we can do is with these interventions, with these cellular technologies and these regenerative medicine, we can actually restore function to the cell. And that's really the root of what we're doing. It's a bit of a oversimplification, but that's really what it is. It's like you have dysfunction, and now we have technology that can restore function.
So, give me an example of what that technology would look like. What would you do? So, let's say I came into the clinic and met with you in your beautiful clinic down in Jumeirah and sat with you and told you the problem. What would take me through the steps that I would go through?
Yeah, so I think I have to explain a little bit of the history because people need to understand a little bit about stem cells, right? Which is what our main kind of intervention. The stem cells have been around for decades, right? And it's nothing new. And there's so many people who are doing it in so many different places. But the problem was these stem cells wouldn't do what we wanted. What do we want a stem cell to do? A stem cell is like a fix-it guy in your body, right? So when the stem cell goes in there, we want it to repair tissue. We want it to survive. We want it to turn into new tissue and regenerate new tissue. But the problem was all these stem cell clinics that were offering the technology that was pretty much everywhere, even to date, most places are offering, most of the stem cells wouldn't survive in the body. 95% die. And then the other issue is the stem cells don't actually regenerate new tissue, they just reduce inflammation. So that can still be helpful. That's not to say they can't be, and that's why some people still do get results. But it's a bit of a misnomer, and it's kind of misleading people because when people think they're getting stem cells, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting rejuvenation, I'm getting repair." But there's all these stem cell clinics, which the doctors don't even understand what they're offering aren't true stem cells. And the guy who actually coined the term, he wrote a paper in 2017 saying that we need to rename it. We need to, instead of calling them stem cells, we need to call them signaling cells, what are called medicinal signaling cells. So right now they're called mesenchymal stem cells, which is essentially just it's an embryological term to identify where the sourcing of the cells are. So for example, they can come from fat, from bone marrow, from umbilical cord tissue, but the biggest problem was he even admitted he named them incorrectly. And so he said that in 2017 and he wrote a paper on that because he first discovered them in 1992. And so he basically said we need to rename them. And so when I came across that, I was kind of like, okay, well, these cells obviously can still be helpful, but they're not truly regenerating tissue. So where can we get cells that regenerate tissue? So these are called what are called pluripotent stem cells.
Pluripotent.
Yes. So
Okay.
pluripotent means that they can turn into any cell in your body. So they're like little chameleons. So they could turn into heart, liver, kidney, brain
Oh,
cells.
really?
Yeah. So, but the problem with pluripotent stem cells historically has been the risk of tumors because then they can also turn into tumors or cancer or stimulate cancer growth. So then you always have this issue of trade-off of being like, okay, safety, or do I do something more risky that might cause something cause some harm down the road? And that didn't stop clinics. Again, there's clinics in around the world that are offering pluripotent stem cells from like aborted fetuses and stuff like that, but they have the risk of tumors. So there was this discovery in 2010 in Japan called muse cells, M-U-S-E.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, so those were the big breakthrough, but then people are probably wondering, why haven't I heard about them? It's because there was another discovery in Japan in 2006 called Yamanaka stem cells, or induced iPSC stem cells. So imagine there's this famous scientist, Yamanaka, who gets all the attention. He won the Nobel Prize for his discovery. And then there's this other great scientist who's a female in 2010, also discovers a stem cell, but her work just gets ignored. And that's basically what happened.
Devastating.
Yeah, and part of it is, unfortunately, Japan's a bit of a paternalistic society too, right? Like, and it's also patriarchal society, right? It's a bit more male dominant and whatnot. So I think her work just, for multiple reasons, just never got the light of day that it deserved. And so I was really the first doctor outside of Japan to start using them. And then that was really what brought, I guess, a lot of these patients to me and a lot of these people, because everyone was like, read. And if you do the reading and literature around it, you can see very clearly the muse cells have that safety profile that the other cells do, but then they're pluripotent. So then they can also turn into new cells, but don't have the risk of tumors. So that's what makes them unique. So if you came into me and you're like, hey, doc, I got this knee problem, my cartilage is like a shock absorber, right? It's a cushion inside your knee. And like we talked about, you get those hallmarks of aging happening at a cellular level on the cartilage. We can inject those muse cells directly into there, and they can repair and restore cell function. So they can change the signaling pattern of the cells, which can get you out of pain, but then they can actually potentially regenerate new tissue too. So, and we combine it with something called a hydrogel scaffold, which is also the other aspect of this, which is very important, because there's all these people doing stem cell injections, but they don't tell you the biggest drawback, which is within 24 hours, only 2% of them remain in the joint because they migrate. So
Wow. So you're having this injection going into a place where you've got your problem. So you're really super confident
yeah,
it's addressing the issue, but then the stem cells move out of
they
that.
move
Okay.
out. So and no doctor will tell you, or no stem cell clinic will tell you that. So and again, these are all things that problems as far as I know, I was the first one to talk about these problems. And this is published research, right? They've done large animal clinical trials showing that the stem cells migrate. So this is out there, and it's just people just don't know it. And then so I was like, okay, what are we really doing if we're doing a stem cell injection that doesn't survive for the most part, that isn't pluripotent, and for the most part is migrating? Of course, the results are going to be mixed. Like, some people may just get, maybe it's placebo, they just get reducing inflammation. So there are some positive results, but for most people it doesn't work, and they're not getting regeneration. So we have to solve for those problems. So how do we solve for them? We use the pluripotent muse cells, and then we combine it with what's called a hydrogel scaffold. So a scaffold is like a 3D jello, you can imagine, that's injected at the same time. So it keeps the muse cells where we want them to stay.
Wow. So you're essentially putting that together, you're putting the framework around it to hold it in
Yes.
place while and it stays there indefinitely
It's
whilst the
the
scaffold's in
hydrogel,
place.
exactly. Yeah, the hydrogel stays there for about 3 to 4 years, which is more than enough time for the cells to do their work. And
How long does it take for the stem cells to do their work with the scaffolding around? So let's say it's my knee. You give me the am I gonna feel different in a week, in a month, in 2 months? What is it gonna be?
it's a big range. Some people feel different within a month. Other people, it takes about 6 months or so. So that's like their time frame. Based off the research that's been done, the muse cells have this integration effect of regenerating new tissue within 2 weeks. That's when the regeneration starts happening. But it takes a process of months, obviously, for that to fully take effect.
So you this process is only offered by you or do other
No, there's other clinics doing it. I was just the first doctor to talk about it, and my mission, so to speak, after I discovered the muse cells, and obviously with Professor Dazawa, like when I met her, was to spread her good work to the world. And Chris Hemsworth was the first high-profile patient I did for muse cells, and once that went live, so to speak, once he spoke about it, then there was a lot of press around it, and then I think that just led to a discussion, and then other doctors get curious, right? Then they start reading, and they're like, oh, I should be switching to the muse cells. So then now there's other muse cell manufacturers that have licensed the technology from Japan, and then there are other doctors providing it as well.
can we list these chronic illnesses, please, to give people an understanding of what can be fixed and what can't be fixed. So let's go through what you can. So we've got joint pain.
Yeah, that's the most
That's a
common.
definite.
Yeah, that's like our success rate with that. I mean, look, in medicine, there's never 100%,
100%.
right? But our success rate with our data that we have has been like 90 to 95% with joint issues, which is really high, especially for chronic diseases. And that means like a significant reduction in pain, like at least 50% reduction in pain.
Okay,
So,
let's just go through
yeah,
these. I want to make sure that everyone understands. So you help with joint pain on any joint in any part of your body. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, give me the next one that you're really good at.
So the other one that's really common is autoimmune conditions. I know that
Okay,
one.
before
So,
we go deeper into that, just give me, because lupus is an order,
yeah, the
Hashimoto's.
exactly, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. There's hundreds of autoimmune conditions,
Okay.
and the problem is the medical system, the way they treat them is each has an individual disease, but it turns out they have the root causes are all very similar. So it's really about reprogramming the immune system, and that's what we can do with these interventions.
So this is a bit of a sidetrack. People's immune systems are affected dramatically when they get something like leukemia.
Yes.
Does this help people that are going through that type of treatment as well?
So leukemia, because it's a type of cancer. So for that, there's other type of cell therapies that are better designed for that purpose.
Okay, so let's
Yeah,
just park that for a minute
yeah.
and let's just carry on. So we've got joint issues, autoimmune issues. What else?
So the other ones that I think a lot of people have probably heard of is like long COVID, because long COVID or vaccine injury, right? Some people get after getting the vaccine, unfortunately, have these lingering symptoms where they get brain fog, they can't exercise, they're tired all the time, and so we can help a lot of those people as well. And then the other one being fibromyalgia, which is like just chronic pain throughout the body. So a lot of these chronic,
Fibromyalgia
yeah,
is, I've heard the name, I don't know what
yeah.
it
It's
is.
basically like imagine just everything hurts. Like literally
You
like your
just
muscles
ache
just
the
aches.
whole,
Yeah,
yeah.
everything. Yeah. And then the fatigue, chronic fatigue often goes hand in hand with that too.
Okay. And so anybody that's suffering with any of those, that's sitting here listening, watching right now, and thinking, I've got that, I've just had to learn to live with it, doesn't have to learn to
No,
live with it.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem there. And that's the reason I got into this whole right we talked about was that it's giving those people hope and being like there's something out there that can help them.
Just stop that for 1 second, because I want him to say something. I want you to say, if you're suffering, I want you to say quite powerfully, because there's a really good micro there. If you're suffering from any of these, you really don't need to live like that.
Mm.
Okay. It's really important you understand it can be solved. All right. So I just asked you the question. So let's just go over those again. You're telling me they don't need to live with these.
If you're suffering and living with any of these chronic diseases, you don't have to live like that. There's hope for you, and there are solutions that we're offering today that can change your life. And we've done it for many people, obviously, and including some high profile people.
Okay, that's really interesting. So there's some stuff that you can make a real difference to, okay? While we're dealing with chronic pain, what is the stuff that actually you can't help with that people would like to think you could?
Yeah, I mean, we're not quite there yet, but there's things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, type 1 diabetes, where we can potentially help, but we can't cure it. But that we're close though. I think it's just going to take a little bit more research to figure out exactly the right dosing and the right protocols. But the muse cells in animal studies have been shown to be helpful for those conditions, but there obviously needs to be more human research done. Same thing with type 1 diabetes, which is where your pancreas obviously doesn't make enough insulin. And there was a study done in China this year where they used those Yamanaka stem cells and they injected them into the pancreas and they were able to cure people with diabetes. And so that just shows you the power of these cellular therapies. And the muse cells, like we talked about, are a safer version than the Yamanaka cells because they don't have the risk of tumors. So I think once there it hasn't been studied yet, but it's one of those things we're looking into is using the muse cells for type 1 diabetes too, and Alzheimer's as well, where you can administer them intranasally so they go directly to the brain. There's a lot of interesting applications for them.
When we look at joints, that's one thing. But when we look at organs, that's a whole different thing. And the
Yes,
fact that a pancreas is an organ,
exactly. Yeah.
does that
No,
need?
that's the beauty of the muse cell. So this is the thing that she published in Japan. She showed a clinical trial with stroke and with heart attacks, which the heart obviously
Yeah,
and the brain, right?
yeah,
And so
blood clot. Yeah.
and so imagine after having a stroke, you have damage, and what's the traditional therapy for it? I mean, after the acute management of it, it's just rehab, right? It's
Hmm.
just trying and then hoping it gets better.
Yeah. It doesn't happen again. Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. So, but she showed in a clinical trial that the muse cells could significantly help these people get back to a normal quality of life. And that was just one infusion of the muse cells. You can dose this as much as you need to get people better. So that just shows you the power of them. And same thing with heart attacks. She showed that it could improve what's called left ventricular ejection fraction, basically the heart function, and restore heart function and reduce scarring. So
This is really serious.
yeah,
Okay, really serious, because the number one killer of men is obviously strokes and heart attacks. They're by far the number one killer, and women it's cancer.
yeah,
And if you're saying you can reduce the likelihood of someone having a stroke yeah, which is a blood clot on the brain, you can reduce the chances of someone having a heart attack, or if they do have a heart attack,
You can help them
treat them so that they don't have a heart attack again, because it's not often it's the first heart attack that kills someone.
Right. Yeah.
I'm talking to a doctor like
No,
I'm a
no,
doctor.
yeah, no, it's you know your stuff. You know your
Let
stuff.
me give you some wisdom here.
Yeah.
So, but it's not, because I have a medical insurance business here, and so we know, we collect data on this.
Yeah.
And so we know the problems that people are suffering with. And so it went from 1 in 3 getting cancer, women 1 in 2. Cancer kills women more than anything else. If you remove young people and suicide, then we're talking about heart attacks and stroke. And again, a lot of the time as well, someone will have a minor stroke before they have a major stroke. And if they have a minor stroke, it's identified with, and you guys can do work, or this world can solve that kind of problem, then you just increase, because a stroke doesn't happen to most people when they're 95.
No.
They have a stroke when they're relatively young by comparison. It's
Yeah.
in the 60s rather than it is in the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, let's talk about real estate. Now, a recent partnership that we've just established on the podcast is with AYS Developers. Luxury properties with high-end finishes from people that really understand the subject. Often in Dubai, you'll find stuff that is maybe substandard. With AYS Developers, you're not going to see that. You're going to see fantastic properties that you can buy, you can invest in, you can make a home on Dubai Islands and other places too. So go visit aysdevelopers.ae and check them out. I promise you it'll be worth the trip. And if someone then can have an extra 20 or 30 years because that could be handled, that's just like a game changer.
I mean, that's why it was shocking to me when I discovered these muse cells and the clinical trials that were done. And I'm like, why aren't these clinical trials being taught? Like, they're in humans, you know what I mean? Like, people get excited about animal studies that are published when people can treat stroke, but this was done in humans in a phase 2 clinical trial in Japan. So it's hard to believe, right? That this stuff is out there and that more people aren't talking about it.
Okay, I just want to take another angle here for a second, because life insurance companies pay life insurance lump sum payments out when people die.
Right.
It's in the interest of the life insurance company that you don't die early, so that you can pay more premiums into your policy for longer. Yeah.
Right.
It's actually absolutely in the interest of the life insurance company, when you have a critical illness policy, which is heart attack, stroke, cancer, leukemia, everything else. Okay, that you don't have a critical illness.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that you don't claim on that $1 million policy. So it's something that the insurance companies and the actuaries and the underwriters should be looking at really closely, and arguably funding even more research.
Exactly.
This, so that people can live longer and not get sick.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it, and that's the future. I'm hoping that transition point will happen, because obviously big pharma is not interested in this solution, but the insurance companies should be interested in this because of the reason you just said. And the other thing is the muse cells. We have data showing that they can slow down aging significantly, which we can talk about. And a lot of that has to do with your immune system. And if you can slow down aging, you can reduce all chronic diseases, right? Because chronic diseases are age-related.
Okay, so we've got kind of aging external and aging internal, if we're really honest, okay? Because it's the kind of it's like feeling young,
right,
okay, and looking in the mirror, okay, and looking young. So when we take those two things and we dissect that a bit, living longer. Okay, is it about feeling younger for the same period of time, or is it about living longer? What is it that's the attraction, do you think?
Well, I think the attraction for most people and for myself is living as long as possible with a high quality of life. Because what happens is
utopia.
Well, that's I mean, but what happens is in the U.S., for example, I mean, the U.S. healthcare system, I think most people know, is not great for chronic diseases, and over 90% of people after the age of 60 have a chronic disease. So then your quality of life just starts.
Over 90%. Say that again.
Yeah. Over 90% of people over the age of 60 in the United States of America have a chronic disease. So
never knew.
That just shows you how much your quality of life starts deteriorating as you get older. And if you can do something to slow down the aging process, then you can prevent or slow down the development of these chronic illnesses.
But if over 90% of people over the age of 60 or 65, did you say? 60.
Over 60, yeah.
60. Does that have a lot to do with the chronic obesity and
Yeah, it's a lot of it is metabolic, and that has to do with it definitely has to do with lifestyle. I mean, that's definitely, I think, the biggest issue. But at the same time, I know there's so many people talking about lifestyle stuff, but I just don't see that stuff changing that much. I mean, the reality is the food system and the environment is so skewed. It's hard for people to adopt the right changes. I mean, people know what to do, but a lot of them still don't do it, right? And so I'm of the opinion that that should still be the foundational advice, obviously, like knowing how to eat and exercise and sleep, stress, all that stuff. But then at the same time, why aren't we looking at solutions that can give people the resiliency or the capability to deal with all these lifestyle choices that they're making? So it's kind of like you're gonna be, if you're living a crappy lifestyle, which a lot of people are, at least there's something that can potentially help you.
a lot of my Muslim friends would say, "Your time's up when your time's up." When Allah wants to come and take you, and you move on, you don't get to choose that. How do you deal with the people that have that that perspective?
Well, I think there was a saying in Islam where the prophet said that you want to you don't want, if you're leaving your horse, for example, he used to say, don't just leave your horse, tie it. But because you could just be like, if you don't tie it and he's gone, it's like, oh, that was God's will. So it's like you still do what you can to prevent or try to intervene if you can, right? Don't just say that that's it. It's like saying, oh, I'm not going to exercise because if I have a heart attack, that's just God's will. You do what you want, you do what you can, and with the means that you have and the access to what you have. So this is just another avenue for trying to slow down that process.
Okay, let's talk about the next part before we talk about some other stuff. We've talked about internal. Okay, we've talking about how stem cells can make a big difference, get the scaffolding around it, and really identify the problem and work on that chronic problem. We've listed out some of the things that you can solve, some of the things you can't solve yet, but are being worked on. So that's really interesting. Parkinson's fascinates me.
Yeah.
Okay, and Alzheimer's as well. And I'm exposed to quite a lot of that in my world.
Hmm.
And my friend Alex Flynn was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 32.
Oh,
And so the youngest age person that diagnosed with Parkinson's, 6 years old.
6.
6 years old, diagnosed with Parkinson's. Anyway, Alex at 32. And so the only way Alex could deal with Parkinson's, okay, and the extreme tremors and shakes and whatnot, was adventure running.
Hmm.
When he was adventure running, he didn't suffer it, okay? And so he ran 1 million meters around the world, okay, so he could do it, raise money for charity. Lovely story. Sadly passed away now, but um, I watched how it gripped him.
Yeah.
And I've lost family members to Alzheimer's, and I think it's such a terrible way.
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's just I'd rather be hit by a truck.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
Yeah, well, I think we'd all agree with that. So the fact that there's work that can be done, that's being done at the moment to find ways to improve that and solve that, is just so important.
Yeah, and this isn't like science fiction or like 20 years away. This is already, for example, in China, they're using again, China. They're just doing all this amazing work there. And people just don't.
Wuhan.
Yeah.
Come out.
Yeah, they're just so closed off, so sometimes people don't realize. But there's a group in Shanghai, and I just went there a couple of weeks ago, so they showed me some of their data. They've successfully treated people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's using these cellular therapies. Now they go require, and these were similar cells to the muse cells. They weren't the exact same, but the point is they were a type of stem cell, but it was just the dosing. So they had to do 6 treatments, and they did intranasal injections as well. But they did 1 treatment every month, and they showed it was 10 or 15 patients in each group, and they were able to show like significant reversal of disease. So that just shows you the power of these. And then we didn't even talk about gene therapies, right? So gene therapies is a whole other platform which you can combine with these cellular therapies to get to the root cause of this.
Unbelievable. I think that for most people, the details aren't the important thing. I think for most people, the outcome
Yeah.
is what people are paying the experts for, aren't they? You don't pay a lawyer so that you can pass the bar exam.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't pay someone like you, which I'm sure is considerable, okay, to know the ins and outs of it. It's just like, are you my cure?
Exactly.
You
It's like,
must-
I just want to get better.
Yeah.
Just do it.
fix-
Just do it.
fix
Just
me.
do it. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the external now. Skin. You are 38 years old. As I said, you've got a baby face. I'm sitting here close up with you. And for everyone that's watching this right now, okay, My daughter's in their 20s. I think their skin's pretty similar. He looks incredibly young. So, first of all, do you use yourself as a guinea pig for the treatment that
I
you do?
do. I always believe in this, and if I didn't do it for myself or my parents, then I wouldn't do it for other people. And
Okay, well, it's interesting because
and
in
so
my
if you ask a surgeon, that's a lot of them will not say the same thing.
yeah, that's right. Well,
So
we have a saying in my business: if you wouldn't sell it to your mum, you shouldn't sell it to anyone. Yeah,
exactly.
so I think we share it in the
Yeah.
same. But beautiful. Okay, now let's take me. I'm 55 years old. I don't look particularly old for my age. I hope you're going to agree
I
with me
agree.
right now. Of course,
You
I
look great. You look
concur.
great. Yeah.
Alex is in the background shaking his head. No, but I have oily skin. Okay,
Mhm.
so and I argue that maybe my oily skin means I've never had to have a Botox injection, a filler, or anything
Mhm.
else. Now, there's a real reason that I've never had the injection is that about 20 years ago, I went to somebody's apartment in Monaco, and he said, "Go and grab a beer out of the fridge." I went to the fridge, and it was full of these vials. And I'm like, "What's that?" He said, "The wrong fridge, the other fridge." I went to the other fridge and got a beer. Went into the living room. There was a dining table chair in the middle of the living room. And I'm like, "What's going on here? We're having a seance or something?" He said, "No, we're having a Botox party."
Yeah.
I then said, "What the hell is Botox?"
Yeah. Right.
He was explaining it. He didn't say it was the poison that it is, but he
Yeah.
said it was something. And then I watched him stick a needle into a girl's forehead, but not like that. It went like that into a forehead, straight.
Mm.
And as I'm watching it, all I can think is like someone pushing a pen straight into my skull.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, that must really hurt."
Yeah.
From that moment onwards, I was never going to get involved
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that, and never have,
Yeah.
Um, but okay, I have oily skin, I get pimples. I'm 55 years old. Surely I should be over that. I've got large pores. I don't spend too much time in the sun. I don't eat perfectly, but I definitely don't drink. I try and eat healthy. I go to the gym every single day. I
Yeah.
hike on a Saturday. Arguably, people that know me would say he's living a really
Really good.
healthy
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but what I look at in the mirror is the same, I'm sure, as what lots of other people look at in the mirror. It's something that isn't as good as it could be, okay, and don't know how to fix it. I
Yeah.
don't want to have pimples on my face,
Yeah.
okay? I don't want to have large pores. I don't want to have oily forehead,
Yeah.
okay? That's very vain of me.
But that's
But it is very vain of me,
yeah.
yeah? But if we were to say, that's fair enough, Spence, you're entitled to your vanity,
Yeah. Exactly.
okay?
Yeah.
How does someone like you sit down with someone like me, okay, look at that and offer solutions?
Well, look, again, I look at it, I like the philosophy from in physics where it's like first principles. And that's the same that's the same logic I use with anything, including skin health. That's why my approach is so different from Botox or fillers because I'm trying to ask myself, why is your skin like this in the first place? What's the root of it? And trying to figure that out and get to that problem. And so that's and it's gonna and that's why sometimes it can sound like hocus pocus because it's like you can use these cells for a knee, but guess what? You can also use them for a face. And because what they do is again they're trying to restore that cell function, and they can actually regenerate new skin cells that are functionally younger and work better. And then you get a slowing of the skin aging. And so it's not going to be as dramatic as Botox, but do you really want to put a toxin in your body? I mean, I know most people do, but there's a shift happening, right? More and more people are trying to look for natural alternatives, and this is something that can work with your skin at a cellular level to slow down that process and restore kind of the function of it, and make the pores smaller, help with acne production, because acne at the end of the day is bacteria, right? And so bacteria can thrives in microenvironments where there's inflammation, where there's what's called oxidative stress. Bacteria are like they're pathogens, obviously, right? They're opportunistic. So whenever there's a microenvironment where they can thrive and they can grow, they're going to take that opportunity. But the muse cells create an environment where it's hard for them to grow. So that's the whole idea. You're getting to the root of it, and that's why. And but so it's not as dramatic as Botox, but at the same time, it's slowing down the skin aging process. So if you're 55 now and you're like, hey, I'm going to start doing this facial every year for the next like 10 years. In 10 years, your skin wouldn't have aged nearly as much as someone who wasn't doing it. So that's more the idea behind it, as opposed to being like a dramatic effect right away. But
So
it will make your
you
yeah.
telling me the outcome's going to be that I look 55 when I'm 65?
You'll maybe look 58 or something. Let's say you would have aged a lot significantly slower if you're someone who wasn't doing that. And
Yeah,
that's
but that's not fair because whatever you're taking, you're not going to give it to me because you look 24 and you're
Yeah.
38.
Yeah. Well, that's I've obviously done
I
the
want what
facial.
you've got. I want your stuff.
Well, you could do them. You could just do them every month, and then just.
Well, is that what you do though? Is that like kind
I
of?
do a high. Yeah, I do them pretty frequently because I can, and I'm like, why not? And then so I kind of been testing it out, and I've definitely seen my wrinkle. I used to have wrinkles, and then they all went away, and I mean my skin's
I
smooth.
hate you.
So it's just like it's cool to see that happen. And again, I've never done Botox. Like, and people always ask all the time. They're like, "Don't you do Botox?" I'm like, "Nope, never touched it. Don't
Really?
want to do that."
And so this treatment that you give yourself or somebody else gives you, you don't do yourself. Please don't tell me.
Yeah, no,
Don't tell
no,
me.
that's too difficult. I have a nurse who can do that
Oh,
for us.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Okay, there's someone there.
yeah.
So anybody that feels that their skin is aging should be talking to you.
I mean, if you're interested in this, like, not everyone's. Some people are happy with Botox and lasers, and there's so many.
Yeah, but
There's
that's
a
'cause
million.
they don't know the difference.
Yeah, but exactly,
That's
and
the truth. The
it-
truth
that-
is,
yeah,
they've been fed, whether you want to call it propaganda or information, whichever
Yeah.
one you want to call it, fed information, and through community conversations and word of mouth, it's like Maureen had it done.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
And, guess what? Ah, she looks lovely.
Exactly.
Yeah?
But I think what you said was really important, where you said you went into that fridge. And if you looked at my fridge, you would see a bunch of exosomes and like, you know what I mean? And that's just what I have. I have that access to that stuff. But in 20 years, I think everyone will be doing it. You know what I mean? Or 10 years, hopefully. Like, it's just the beginning of that kind of revolution.
And will it become like the because we've seen the whole weight loss stuff going on.
Yeah,
I know they're
yeah.
peptides. People say Ozempic, Manjaro. What's the other one?
Retatrutide, that's a new one.
Yeah, that's a new one on top of that.
Yeah,
Is
it's the third generation of Ozempic, basically. Yeah.
okay, and that way of distributing that is an EpiPen essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
People are taking an injection
Yeah.
in their tummy or their knee or their leg or something, and someone described that as because most people go, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that. Probably secretly want to do it themselves.
Mhm.
I can't believe you're doing that. Why aren't you doing it the real way? Why don't you just stop eating Cocoa Pops? Why don't you
Yeah.
stop drinking beer or whatever
Yeah.
it may be? Go on a diet. And there's some shame around it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay. Like there's shame around men's skincare.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's kind of, a man's man.
Yeah, it's like, who cares? Yeah.
Metrosexual. What's that all about? Yeah.
Yeah.
So with this kind of like this new treatment that's coming along and more, you've got peptides. When I was introduced to peptides probably 5 or 6 years ago, it had nothing to do with losing weight. But now it's kind of, that word is in losing weight as well, which is almost to some degree making it normalized.
Yeah, no, it's become one of the huge biggest businesses in the world. But I do think there are benefits to it in the right context. So meaning that so many people have metabolic disease, right? Because the type 2 diabetes, they have too much fat around their stomach, their metabolism doesn't work as well as it should. And so if you can do something to help their metabolic health, that's going to have a huge impact on their health. But at the same time, there's all this research coming out about Ozempic and some of the risks associated with it that we didn't know about. So I think you have to I think the newer generation peptides like retatrutide is very interesting because it doesn't just suppress your appetite. So for those who don't know, Ozempic basically just suppresses your appetite, and it's what's called a GLP-1, which basically just makes you not eat. And Mounjaro does the same. But this newer peptide, it still has a bit of an appetite suppressant effect, but then it also improves your ability for insulin sensitivity. So meaning it's making your body better at processing sugar. And so it just makes your cells more sensitive, which is actually a good thing. So it's improving your cellular health. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Whenever I'm looking at a peptide or any intervention, I'm kind of saying, okay, is this doing something at a cellular or root cause level to make my body work better? If it's just like a Band-Aid solution, then that's not really ideal for me. And every time we do these Band-Aid solutions, we find out later that they had all these risks with them. Ozempic being one of the examples.
Yeah, but I don't want to get on my high horse here. Okay, if you're prepared to stick pig poison in your face, you really haven't got any argument to bitch about anything else, have you? Really, if you're a lady and you're shoving Botox in your face, then really,
Yeah.
because arguably there's all the downsides of what goes with that. But then let's take the government that forced everyone to have an injection.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
or a number of injections.
Yeah.
Okay, some years ago, so that we could travel because of their fears around COVID. We were forced to take medication that hadn't been fully researched and now was shown to have incredible
There
side
was just
effects.
a study published in Korea with like 7 or 8 million people showing when people got the COVID vaccine, they were at significantly increased risk of lung cancer, gastrointestinal cancer, and breast cancer. So there's evidence coming out that these vaccines do something to our immune system and over time may increase the risk of cancer, autoimmune conditions, and other chronic diseases because your immune system is so important for regulation of and prevention of disease. And
But I think worrying about what might happen in the future, okay, is something that I don't think people, because it doesn't apply to everybody. At the end of the day, we had to take the injection. The government told us we needed to take it. Okay, so 90% of the population were here for sure, did as they were told and took the injection. Okay, we don't have to take Botox injections. Okay, but we still do. People don't need to drink alcohol, but they still
yeah,
do.
yeah,
People don't need to smoke, but they still do. And
yes.
people don't need to take cocaine, ecstasy, or whatever it is that they take, but they still do. There are side effects to so many things. I'm sure if I lived on a diet of Fruit Loops and nothing else, that I'm sure that there'd be quite a lot of chronic side effects that went
Yeah.
with that. We just have to do the best with what we've got right now in terms of the information. And it doesn't always last forever. And like stem cell work, if you can get your body to regenerate and rejuvenate, then arguably there's some stuff that can be worked out of the body over a number of years if we're using this type of treatment that you offer.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think we're just starting to unlock the code, so to speak. There's this code for healing and regeneration, and we're just trying to figure out what that is. So I don't know if you ever heard of those. There's these little lizards called exaltos. There's like
Exaltos,
AXOLTOL. Hold on.
lizards,
Yeah, they can
not
regenerate.
lizards.
Yeah, and they figured it. This is the reason I'm bringing this up is because there was just a study a few months ago that they figured out just a very one specific molecule. Like if they gave it to them, they were able to like regenerate their limbs, and it was just so interesting because it's like how can just one molecule lead to regeneration of a whole limb? But it just shows you that our body there is this blueprint of healing and regeneration, and we're just figuring out what that is. And I think over time it's going to become more and more obviously, over time it's going to become more unraveled, so to speak, because we're going to be able to, I think one day eventually we'll be able to figure out, for example, with the frequency or with the right signals, like even electrical signals, that you can just get your body to heal.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot going on here. Going back to a point earlier that I spoke about with the insurance companies, it's interesting how you've got the drug companies that want to force you to take the medication, okay, that doesn't heal the problem, it just covers it up. You've got the hospitals that make money the more time you spend with them. Then you've got the insurance companies that don't really want to have to pay out, but but the hospitals and the pharmaceutical companies are essentially trying to get their money
Yeah.
because most people have got insurance. And then you've got the insurance companies that really need someone like you to solve the problem of people getting sick and dying early.
Well, I tried to make this argument to before I left Canada. I spoke with the premier. We have like governors in different provinces,
Sure.
and excuse me, I spoke to what would be called the governor there, and I was like, why don't we show that if we do these knee injections, we can actually save the system tens of thousands of dollars because instead of having to get knee replacement surgery, which ultimately costs significantly more than a stem cell injection,
Yeah.
then we're actually saving the system money and you're offloading the system from hospital care and all the post-surgical complications and everything that comes after surgery. So that was my argument. And he's like, oh yeah, good idea, good idea. Talk to the Minister of Health. And then I spoke to the Minister of Health and then she didn't even know what regenerative medicine was. So it was just like, it's just like hitting
I
a
give
jump.
up.
Yeah, I was just like, all right, well, there goes that.
Might as well go and talk to the wall.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. Lastly, let's talk about some of we'll talk about your clinic actually, but right at the very end. But let's talk about some of your celebrity clients. So, and I've got a couple of queries around a couple of them because it's not all sunshine and rainbows as far as I'm concerned. Kim Kardashian is probably the most famous person in terms of global phenomenon out there that you've worked with. What did you fix for Kim?
Yeah, so she talked about it on her post, and I think a lot of people didn't believe it because it almost sounded too good to be true. She had chronic shoulder pain. She had a tear in her shoulder for 2 years, and then she had chronic back pain. So it's just, and you know how bad back pain can be for
Oh yeah.
people, and it was getting to a point where it's debilitating. It was hard for her to do her daily stuff, and so she came to me because she was trying to obviously find solutions for this, and she had already tried the traditional stuff, right? Physiotherapy. She had tried PRP, which is like the plasma injections for her shoulder, and so it was just ongoing. And then we did the injections, and she felt like within a week, she felt her shoulder was like so much better, and then her back, same thing. It was like immediately had like significant relief, and she's been doing great ever since. And it just shows you the power of these technologies with chronic pain, right? And so, and again, this is someone who has access to anyone in the world, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously she has like resources to go to whoever. And I think the reason that she came to me is because I was able to explain clearly why this stuff makes sense at a cellular level, and just making her understand that we're getting to the root cause, and how we're doing everything. And it's also the other, I guess, the other kind of like nuance to that too, like in Kim's case especially, is that she had an MRI, right? Everyone gets MRIs, but one of our skill sets is diagnostic ultrasound. So with ultrasound, if you have the right technician or technologist, like someone who specializes in it, we have an amazing one, and we can find small tears that get missed on MRI. So for
Oh.
example, in her case, there's another tear that was missed on MRI, and we were able to treat that as well. So there's also that kind of diagnostic aspect to it as well, which you got to really, you kind of, you got to think through the problem as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, the MRI says this, therefore you have this.
Got it.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay, let's go through them. Chris Hemsworth, what was wrong with him?
He also had back pain.
Okay.
Yeah. And he actually had surgery. He had a L5S1 disc fusion, but then afterwards he was still having pain. And he was actually worse after the surgery. And then he was just like, he's like, what do I do?
And mine was L4. Okay, so
Yeah.
you treated him.
Yeah. And then we got
Fixed
him.
it?
Yeah. And then we got him out of pain. Yeah.
Okay, Tony Robbins.
So Tony had shoulder surgery, and his big issue was that after shoulder surgery, he was having a lot. He got kind of re-aggravated, and then he was just having a lot of bruising and swelling. And we just did an IV for him, and then right away it got rid of his pain, so he didn't need pain meds, and just helping him with healing. And then we've been doing like longevity stuff for him as well.
Zac Efron.
Zach was also back pain.
Oh,
So,
really?
I know it's kind of crazy how many people have chronic back pain, right?
Okay, so you fixed that. I want to talk about Zac Efron. He looks awful compared to how he used to look. He doesn't look. I don't know how he's aged in the way he's aged, because
Yeah.
he's certainly not as old as you, and he's definitely not as old as me. He's only in his early 30s, probably.
I think we're similar age, but
he
anyway,
he just looks so unlike how he used to look
right? Yeah,
facially.
yeah, and
I mean, he's ripped.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. But
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what else he's had done, but I can tell you that hopefully he'll start, now that he's working with me. Hopefully we'll see a transformation over the next few years. We'll see. But I haven't focused.
can you acknowledge what I said though? Because if you're working with him, you'll know the before and after.
Yeah, yeah, no, everyone has said that. I mean, a lot of people have said that to me too. They're like, and I mean, I'm not a cosmetic specialist, so that's not my area.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that hopefully my plan. I've only been working with Zach for the last 2 years, but hopefully over the next few years, we'll be able to, if he keeps doing these treatments with us, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to make him, look more youthful and everything.
If you could work with anyone and you could choose who it was, who would you really love to work with?
I think I would enjoy working with someone like Elon Musk, I guess, because he's inspired me a lot from just like it's a whole thing he did with Tesla and from 2010, and being able to identify this promising technology. I mean, he didn't create Tesla, right? He just came in and kind of took it over and ran it, and saw the future of where the kind of everything's headed. And so I think having someone who sees the future is kind of like what I see myself as too, is like being able to be like, okay, where are things headed? And it'd be cool to talk to someone like that, but also get someone like that interested in the stuff, because then you get a lot more mainstream acceptance, I think, too.
And can we cure cancer with stem cells eventually?
Not stem cells, but different cellular therapies. So, for example, you have immune cells in your body called natural killer cells. The name suggests they're natural killers. They fight cancer cells. There's something called dendritic cells. There's all these immune cells, and now we can isolate them. And this is already happening in Japan, for example, which again is a very advanced in terms of cellular therapies. They can take your immune cells and they can train them to target the cancer. So imagine they take your blood, they isolate the immune cells, and then they train them and they infuse them back in. and they've had very positive results for that. And the beauty is it's a lot safer than traditional chemotherapy and surgery and radiation. So there are all these cellular therapies that are being developed, and I think eventually there will be a point where it's like, okay, cell therapy and gene therapy combined will be able to cure these diseases. And on the note of gene therapy, there's a doctor, Patrick Sewell, who's also doing work on this, where he does whole genome sequencing. So he'll map out the tumor, and then he'll make a custom, and then he'll figure out the genetic sequencing of it, and then he'll make a customized gene therapy for it.
Do you think, knowing what you know and with the experience that you've got, that pharmaceutical companies don't always want to cure diseases?
I am almost positive that's the case.
So there's a really strong agenda, yeah?
Yes, and just because something is FDA approved doesn't mean that it's necessarily safe either. So there's been lots of examples of drugs. One was this drug called Adelheim, and it was approved a few years ago for Alzheimer's. And then if you look at the data, and this is all published out there, they were like, why was this drug approved? And then it was just there was all these conflict of interest and people in the FDA board who were involved with the pharmaceutical company, and then eventually they pulled the drug. But that just shows you that the system has a lot of kind of faults to it. It's not perfect.
Born in Canada, built a successful business in the United States, then moved to Dubai. Why?
So the main reason I came to Dubai was because the progressive nature of the government and the people who are here, meaning they're very futuristic looking. Like they want to build a society that is a better future for everyone. And I feel supported here from that perspective too. In fact, the government's actually working on they want to make Dubai the longevity capital of the world. And they're creating a regulatory framework. They want to be the first city in the world to regulate longevity. So not everyone can just call themselves longevity, because everyone's doing that now. So that just shows you the progressive nature and mindset.
And do you feel at home here?
I'm starting to. I mean, I've only been here for a year, so you need to meet more people, I guess, and make more friends and stuff like that.
With the name Adeel Khan, you've got heritage here,
Yeah,
Pakistan
yeah,
heritage.
yeah.
Okay, so you got Pakistani heritage. Is there any part of your family that are still in Pakistan?
Mm,
Aging uncles, grandparents, stuff like that.
Not. I mean, no, not really. Everyone's in Canada, pretty much. Yeah.
And do you consider yourself Canadian or with Pakistani heritage, or just Canadian?
I think I'm very Canadian with a little bit of Pakistan. I've never even been to Pakistan, so I gotta go visit there.
As it's 2 hours away.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
It'd be rude not
I
to,
know
I guess,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, while I'm here.
Islamabad apparently is a very beautiful city, and so
Yeah,
nice to go visit. Thank you so much for coming to join me on the show today. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
You've got this great clinic that you've opened up here. It's near Jumeirah. It's in Jumeirah, sorry, near the Four Seasons Hotel.
yeah.
Just so that the people that are listening to this know whether they are the type of client that should be coming to see you. I know what you do isn't cheap. Okay, so let's just be very clear about that. What's the average spend of somebody that comes into your clinic?
So in US dollars, it probably ranges from like 15,000 US dollars. Yeah.
15,000 US
Yeah.
dollars. And is any of the work that you do able to be covered by medical insurance?
Not yet, but that might change soon because the muse cells are getting registered as a drug here, which is happening actually like imminently, and so eventually there'll be a DIN number, and then there could be reimbursement from insurance.
Because it's got to be better for the insurance companies to be able to deal once and for all with the chronic
Exactly.
injury of the client
Yeah,
than constantly medicate.
yeah, or just avoid surgery. Like, why just do an injection instead of getting surgery, right? That still saves the insurance companies a lot of money. So it just makes a lot of sense to go through that approach.
Excellent stuff. I really appreciate your time. It's been great chatting to you. Thanks for coming to join me, Adeel.
Yes, thanks for having me. It was fun.